Hi everyone, I'm Hayley Victoria and welcome back to my crime and policing channel. In today's video, we are looking at something that you have requested. That's right, we are looking at UK drug laws and we're going to kick off with cannabis. I know I've covered a little bit about this before, but that was ages ago and the video looked like it had been recorded on an actual potato. So we're doing a bit of a refresh, a revamp, and we're going to kick off with cannabis. Before I start, I just like to make my position in relation to the use of illegal substances quite clear. So I do not take drugs. I don't even drink alcohol. I'm currently on Fanta with no sugar. That's how rock and roll I am. So I don't take drugs. I don't promote the use of illegal substances. In fact, I don't promote the use of anything that you've not been prescribed. So there you go. That's my position right now. Okay, let's get right into it. Cannabis is universally known and used. You can go to any country in the world, well, maybe not any country, most countries in the world, and you're walking down near the beach or anywhere and you get a waft of cannabis, right? You know what it smells like. Herbie, it smells a bit like sage. You ever burned sage when you broke up with someone? Oh, I have. But it smells a bit like sage. It's quite strong. It's used by a lot of people globally, and it's classified differently in different countries. So some places you'll go to, even states in America, some states it's legal, some states it is not. In the UK, it is not legal. In fact, it's a Class B drug. So if you look at the Misuse of Drugs Act 1971, there are three classifications of drugs. You've got your A's, your B's, and your C's. Your C's are your lower risk. B, you've got a higher risk, and your A's are the bad news ones, right? In fact, I know they're all bad news, but A's are your serious bad news. You're talking heroin up there. You're looking at B for cannabis. That means there's a risk, a moderate risk of harm to the people who are taking it. And as such, it is unlawful to possess, supply, or create and cultivate. And there are different procedural things that you do as a police officer in order to make sure law is maintained. Okay, so I remember back in the olden days when it was like the 90s, my dad referred to cannabis as wacky backy. And I thought I was going to die of just cringe. And sorry if you're watching this, Dad, but it was the cringiest thing I've ever heard. Wacky backy, oh my God. In front of my friends, like, you're not going to smoke wacky backy, are you? No, we're all right. Anyway, yeah, so I'm going to return that cringe to you. If you're watching this and you're my students from college, get ready. And if you're watching it and you're my 13-year-old daughter, I really hope you show your friends. Here we go. I'm going to read a list of street names of cannabis from vertiverhealth.com. Now, I've heard of most of these. Maybe I am actually a bit more down with the kids than I thought, right? Let's have a go. You ready? Grass, green, hash, pot, weed, dank, reefer, Mary Jane, chronic, nug, brackets, nugget. I've never heard of that one before. Bud, herb, flower, skunk, dope, hay, blaze, boom, rope. Now, I've never heard of some of those. I've heard of most of them because obviously I'm 40. I've been in the world a long time and I've heard of most of these things. Obviously, I taught police officers for a long time and college kids. So I've heard of most of these things. I know back in the olden days, in fact, you might have probably heard of ganja as well. In the olden days when I was first getting exposed to this kind of stuff in my teenage years, when people started talking about it, they used to talk about different things. They were like, oh my God, have you tried White Widow? Have you tried Purple Haze? So back in like the 2000s, a bit before that, they were starting to modify cannabis and other things as well to give the more psychoactive effect of cannabis a bigger high. So people were getting stronger drugs. And then somebody moved away from the more herbal kind of natural stuff that people talk about into this kind of man-made or man-infused drugs, which gave them a stronger high and are more difficult for people to moderate and maintain. Now, some of these names you might have heard of, like I mentioned, White Widow, Purple Haze, Acapulco Gold, lots of different things you might have heard of. Now, it's a whole world and people cultivate cannabis all the time. In fact, there was a cultivation in the news this morning that had been uncovered. I know people have mentioned this before about how to spot if a house has got a grow in it when people are growing cannabis in it. And yeah, there's a lot of heat emits from these houses. And I remember I've spoken about it before, now I have because people commented on it, when there was one house in Rotherham and it was snowing and it was the only roof on the road where there was no snow on that roof because of the heat generated from the grow. So it's quite sophisticated now in how people are actually cultivating cannabis. There is a massively dark side to the cultivation of these drugs. And that is the people that are used to run these plantations, these farms. A lot of people in these are trafficked. So I know a lot of people, when I've had comments on my videos about drugs and stuff before, about, oh, maybe you should smoke some weed, you might chill out a little bit. And I'm like, do you know the actual cost that growing this has on other people? Yeah, you might spend £10 and get a bit of weed and I don't know, think you're Snoop Dogg. But do you know the human cost behind people growing cannabis? Because it is bad. You've got people who are illegally transported into the country, having their passports taken away from them, trapped in these grows and forced to water and feed these plants without having any water and food themselves. You've got a massive human cost to growing these drugs, to dealing these drugs. It's a massive, massive network of drug dealers and victims of not only criminal exploitation, but criminal sexual exploitation. Is massive, and there's a massive human cost. So before you start kicking off saying, oh, chill out, Ailey, actually have a look at the wider implications of these grows. Now, there are 3 stages of procedure in relation to how you will be processed if you are convicted or caught in possession of cannabis. Stage 1 is a cannabis warning. Stage 2 is a PND or penalty notice of disorder. And stage 3, you've guessed it, you're being arrested. Congratulations! You've engaged Article 5 of the Human Rights Act and now you are nicked. The first one, as I've mentioned, is a cannabis warning. I get all my information from the College of Policing Authorised Professional Practice. So if, like me, you like to keep abreast of laws, this is the place I would direct you to. I'm going to pop this on the screen so you can read along with me. So these are things you've got to take into account when you are deciding whether or not to give someone a cannabis warning. So the actual offence is the possession of a small amount of cannabis consistent with personal use. That means they've not got loads of stuff on them. If you think, actually, this person's probably a dealer or could be a dealer, you cannot give them a cannabis warning. It's got to be a small enough amount to constitute as personal use. Okay, evidential standard. So the police officer must have reasonable suspicion that the offence of cannabis possession has been committed and there is sufficient evidence for a realistic prospect of conviction. You're not going to convict someone over a bit of dust in a grinder. It's got to be enough that it's enough to get conviction, but not too much that you think they are dealing. Admission of guilt. The offender must make a clear and reliable admission to all elements of the offence. Yes, that's cannabis. Yes, it's mine. And yes, I'm using it for my own personal use. Offender consent. So the offender is not required to explicitly consent to accepting the cannabis warning, but obviously it would be nice. Offender history. So the offender must be over the age of 18. That's a big point right there. No evidence of dealing or possession with intent to supply. The offender must not be smoking cannabis in the company or vicinity of young or vulnerable people. Now, that's a massive aggravating factor. We've spoke about these before. If someone's outside of school and people are coming out and you're smoking cannabis, you're potentially putting them at risk, okay? That's why it's an aggravating factor and a cannabis warning just wouldn't be allowed. They should not have raised a defence to the offence. Now, there are specific times when people can actually legally have cannabis. That's if they are, for example, using it for medical purposes and they're getting it from a proper place, not just getting it from Dodgy Dave on the estate. It's got to be from a proper medical supplier. They must be able to understand what is happening, so they've got to have proper mental capacity. If someone doesn't understand you because they've not got mental capacity or there's a language barrier, you cannot go through with this. Be compliant with the warning procedure, possess a verifiable name and address, so they can't be Mickey Mouse from 123 Shit Street. It's got to be a verifiable name and address. And have no previous record of a cannabis warning, PND or drug convictions. Now it's a 3-tiered process like I mentioned. Cannabis warning first, and then if they get caught again, PND. If they get caught again, arrest. Okay, it's a scale. We're starting at number 1. Implications. The cannabis is confiscated and a record of the cannabis warning is made on local systems. Cannabis warnings can be placed before the court for use as evidence of bad character, and this is a tricky bit and interesting, could be disclosed as part of an enhanced DBS check. If you want to be a teacher or something else, guys, put down the weed, okay? That's your cannabis warning. Your next step is a penalty notice for disorder. Again, there are certain things they have to have, like a real name and address, guys. And then your third step is arrest. Let's have a look at the specific legislation. Possession, you're looking at Section 5 of the Misuse of Drugs Act 1971. You will look at potentially, after you've gone through your cannabis warning, your P&D, and you're being locked up, learn your lesson, guys. You're looking at potentially 5 years in prison an unlimited fine, or both. For supply or production, it's Section 4 of the Misuse of Drugs Act of 1971, and you are looking at a potential whopping 14 years in prison, an unlimited fine, or both. For cultivation, that means you're growing it or farming it, you're looking at Section 6 of the Misuse of Drugs Act 1971, and again, 14 years in prison, an unlimited fine, or both. And I know I get people always mentioning on this channel, oh, what about murderers? Guys, there's a human cost to illegally producing cannabis. There is a human cost. The people who are working in these factories and places aren't happy. We've got people cuckooing. We've got people who are being, like I mentioned, coercively controlled into these horrific situations. People who are being actually murdered and abused by people who are in charge of these operations. There is a human cost to illegally producing cannabis. That's why it's so severe. Okay? You've also got the poor kids that are being used in county lines gangs running this stuff all around the UK. So there is a massive human cost to this. That's why the offence is so serious. That's why the judicial process is so strict on this and the penalties are so high. There is a human cost. Let's have a look at medical use then. So in November 2018, an amendment was made to the Misuse of Drugs Regulations 2001, where medical marijuana could be authorised under very strict regulations. It must be prescribed by a specialist doctor. That's not just your average GP, a specialist doctor. Only for patients with exceptional need. Common conditions for that could be epilepsy, MS, or maybe nausea that's caused by chemotherapy. These are exceptional rules. You can't just get marijuana on prescription because you've got, I don't know, a sore foot or something. It's got to be exceptional clinical need. It's listed in Schedule 2 of the 2001 regulations. I don't know that's an amendment that was made in 2018. And possession is only legal with a valid prescription. So remember what I said earlier about cannabis warning? Have they said, actually, it's medical, they've got to prove it with a prescription. Okay, so there is medical marijuana. Yes, it exists, but it's very, very tight regulations. So let's talk about CBD. CBD is massive at the minute, isn't it? People are having it left, right, and centre. They are looking at things like gummies, sprays, teas, vapes, all containing CBD. So how is that legal? CBD stands for cannabidiol, which is part of cannabis. There's also another part, tetrahydrocannabinol, which is THC. So these two different bits, CBD, THC. Now, these combined make cannabis very illegal. Once we take out the THC, CBD is legal. Now, the THC part gives you the high. That's a psychoactive part of cannabis that makes people high. That's the high part. CBD is the mellow and the calm. And a lot of people use that for different health conditions. I've got friends who have CBD products for anxiety, for ADHD, lots of different things they use CBD for. It does, however, have to pass the FSA, which is a Food Safety Act 1990 and the Human Medicine Regulations 2012. So you can buy CBD products in Boots, Co-op, Morrison's. They sell it everywhere. Do not worry, guys, if you're watching this. Your dad is not suddenly a druggie. He's just got himself some cans of Trip from Co-op. As I mentioned, THC element is not legal. So that's where you might find yourself in some sticky water. You have to get these from proper places. You can't just be like, oh yeah, my mate made me some CBD drink. Did he now? Cool. Let's just recap what we've looked at today then. Cannabis is illegal in the UK. It's a Class B drug under the Misuse of Drugs Act 1971. There are various different offences from possession, supplying, intent to supply and cultivation. There are loads more too. The biggest take home here is there is a human cost to the cultivation of cannabis. And I know you guys watching the videos sometimes get a bit heated and you tell me, oh Hayley, you should just chill out. Maybe you should smoke some weed to be a bit less stressed out. There is a human cost to the cultivation of cannabis. The people that are having to run some of these farms are illegally transported to the country and treated like absolute dirt. They are victims of human trafficking. They are kept in these horrible areas where it's hot, there's no food, there's no water, and they call it modern slavery. There's nothing modern about it. These people are massively mistreated, sometimes murdered, and taken away from their families. They don't have passport, no access to money, help, people that can speak their language. There's a massive human cost to this. That's why it is so serious. Okay, I hope you found this interesting. Please let me know in the comments any ideas or thoughts you may have. Stay safe, look after yourselves, look after each other, and please do not commit any crimes.